Since the dawn of time, man has used the bow and arrow for hunting, recreation, and sport. While modern-day archery equipment differs dramatically from that used hundreds of years ago, one thing remains consistent: the use of fletchings on arrows. Fletchings are the short 2 to 4 inch vanes or feathers that are placed on the back end of the arrow. We know that adding fletchings to an arrow shaft causes the arrow to spin, but why? And why do we want the arrow to spin in the first place? Here's a video showing an arrow in flight. As you can see, the arrow begins to spin immediately after it is released from the bowstring. This spinning can be attributed to the fletchings on the arrow, but again, why do we want the arrow to spin in the first place? We hypothesize that in archery, the feathers on the arrow, or fletchings, cause air resistance, or drag, that prevents air turbulence from pushing the arrow off course. They also spin the arrow, which increases accuracy. What we find is that this is partially true. The arrow starts at zero rotation, but as air passes over the fletchings, as shown in the diagram, the arrow begins to accelerate its spin quickly. As the arrow continues on, the spin rate speeds up. There are now two velocities in play: the arrow velocity and the fletching rotational velocity. The fletching rotational velocity is its rotational speed at a right angle to the shaft. The drag on the entire arrow is the sum of the arrow speed and the fletching spin rate. The spin velocity increases until at some point the speed of the arrow is not sufficient to continue the spin acceleration, and it will have reached peak rotation speed. All of this is happening while the arrow is oscillating, complicating the simple factors that we just talked about. What this means is that there is additional drag on the whole arrow, but mostly on the rear of the arrow where the fletching is, as it bends and wobbles through the air. Part of the drag on the fletching is trying to straighten the arrow out instead of spinning it. One major concept called gyroscopic inertia explains why spinning an arrow increases accuracy, which is ultimately the goal of all archery. Gyroscopic inertia, as illustrated in the figure, shows that the faster an object spins, the less likely it is to stray from the path that its axis is traveling on. Therefore, a general rule of thumb is, the faster an object spins, the straighter its trajectory will be. Hence, arrows have fletchings to improve accuracy. As air passes over the fletchings, it spins the arrow. Gyroscopic inertia reveals that the faster an object spins, the straighter the trajectory. Therefore, arrows have fletchings to flatten trajectory and increase accuracy.